What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and today I'm feeling very excited because I'm finally about to build an all-white 7900 XTX gaming PC build. This is a build that's been in the planning for I can't even tell you how long, and I'm so excited to actually put it together today. Awesome for 4K gaming, it's gonna look sick, and hopefully provide some pretty good value in the process. It is, of course, not a cheap build, but it isn't excessively expensive either, and goes to show that you can achieve strong 4K gaming performance without spending a fortune. Let's do this. I'm going to split this video down into a few key sections. First, I'm going to look at all the parts that I picked and why, and also provide some alternative choices. Second, I'll put the whole system together step by step so we can see what goes right and probably what goes wrong. And then I'll look at the performance a little bit later, once we've booted it up, sorted the BIOS, the drivers, Windows, and all that fun stuff. So let me begin with really the beating heart of this build, the part that we've been trying to get a hold of for so long. This is a PowerColor Hellhound Radeon RX 7900 XTX White Edition. This is basically AMD's top-end GPU from their RDNA 3 lineup, 24 gigs of VRAM, pretty solid ray tracing performance, and insane straight rasterization performance with PowerColor's Hellhound cooler in white. In fact, we tried so hard to find this, I eventually ordered it from Overclockers here in the UK. I'll leave the link to where I bought it from down below. It's a beauty. 3 fans, RGB, a white shroud. It would be better if the heatsink was white, but I'm not going to complain. Fully white backplate with a couple of silver accents, but primarily white. Even got white PCI lane, that was rude. Even got white PCI lane covers. This thing is so stunning, and I'm just utterly in love with it. So very, very excited for that. I'm going to be pairing it up with the ASUS Prime X670E Pro. It's one of the cheaper X670 boards, but has a lot of white and silver accents. A lot of the black parts of the board are going to be covered, and our white memory is going to slot in just here and look beautiful. Talking of which, I've gone for something a bit different. I've got this. This is the XPG Lancer, two 32GB kits. Now, if you're just building this for gaming, the one kit's going to be totally fine. I'm going to pop 2 in just to fill all those RAM DIMM slots and give us 64 gigs of DDR5, 6,000 mega transfers a second, and a cache latency of 30, 40, 40 makes it pretty good. And it supports Intel XMP3 and AMD Expo. So you've got all those memory overclocking profiles you could possibly dream of. XPG also kindly sent over their Gammix S70 Blade. It's a PCI Gen 4 SSD. This is a 1TB drive, but to be honest, the 2TB might make sense for some of you, depending on the size of your Steam libraries and all that good stuff. CPU-wise, we've got the Ryzen 7800 X3D. I've used this chip so many times. This is another part that when it first launched, you struggled to get hold of, and for good reason. It's sensational. Insane single thread, insane multi-thread, great overclocking performance, 8 cores and 16 threads. Boost to 5 GHz, isn't too power consumptive, and has AMD's 3D stacked cache, which basically alleviates the biggest bottleneck of any modern gaming CPU, which is of course the cache. While it doesn't consume loads and loads of power, it isn't the world's coolest chip in the world, which is where the iCUE H150i Elite Capellix XT comes in. I have stuck with sort of a Corsair ecosystem, Corsair case, power supply, cooler. The reason being is we can then control everything nice and easily in Corsair iCUE, apart from the memory, but we'll look at how that's controlled later. That will just allow us to tie in the wider general build aesthetic. This is the refresh version with this cool little triangle patterns, and it's got XT on the end. If I'm being honest with you all, you don't need the XT version, but if you can get it and it doesn't cost too much more, then why not? As far as power supplies go, I picked up the RM850. This is going to be fine for the 7900 XTX. This particular card only has 2 8-pin power connectors, so definitely don't need to go for 1,000 or 1,200 watts. That is the one thing that both AMD and, to their credit, Nvidia should be really, really commended for, and that's how power efficient the new GPUs are. Yes, you can buy a last gen card on the lower end to save money, but the new cards sip so little power compared to their last generation counterparts. That's pretty much all the parts in the bag, apart from the case. This is pretty special as well. This is basically the Corsair 4000D Airflow, but better. Corsair added white accents rather than the grey that you get on the normal 4000D Airflow, and they swapped out the 2 crap fans that you get included, sorry Corsair, with 4 white QL editions. That's basically their highest end fans, or at least their highest end non-iCUE Link fans. They look sensational. You've got RGB in the hub and around the outer circle of the fan on both sides. They're insane, and to get those 4 fans included with a case like this is actually phenomenal value. I'll link everything mentioned today though down in the description below if you'd like to learn more or buy any other bits. I think I've made a bit of a mess, so let me begin by tidying up. And installing everything into the motherboard first of all. It's time to really see what the Prime X670E Pro Wi-Fi is made of. When you're installing things into any motherboard, the best thing to do is just take the motherboard out the box and pop it back on top of the box. We're going to use this kind of as our workspace, I suppose, for everything motherboard related. While we're here, let me show you a few cool things about this ASUS board. We've got this nice little push clip here, which actually does the PCIe latch. That means you haven't got to snap it or try and get in there with a screwdriver. The I/O on the rear is also pretty good. 2.5 gig Ethernet, USB-C, USB-A, Wi-Fi 6E, ticks a lot of boxes. PCIe Generation 5 support for both the graphics card slot and the M.2 slot. We're only using Gen 4 drives and graphics cards in this build, but for a little bit of, and I don't like using this word, future-proofing, gonna be totally fine. First port of call, I think, is opening up the CPU and getting this installed into the motherboard. This video isn't kind of intended to be a full tutorial, right? If you want to learn more about how to install a CPU, you can read our web articles down in the description below. I'm going to lift up the arm though, reveal the socket, then of course go ahead and drop the Ryzen processor into place. Bit of a wiggle, arm down, cover down, plastic off, chuck it out the window. Don't actually chuck it out the window. Keep it in case you ever need to RMA the board or anything like that. I'm going to pop the M.2 SSD in next. So to do that, I need to remove the M.2 heat cover, which will reveal the M.2 drive sort of slot itself. That's where the Gammix S70 Blade is going to go. Now, if we take a look at the drive in the box, you'll see there is the drive itself on the bottom and then the actual heat shield, heat cover on the top. Now, we're not going to use that because, of course, we're using the inbuilt one on the ASUS motherboard in this system. So pop the cover down, add the little latch back into place, and then return the heat shield. Nice and simple. Couple of screws, and that's going to ensure that doesn't go anywhere and make sure everything is installed nice and easily, and of course stays nice and cool. We don't want an overheating SSD, do we now? RAM is then the next port of call. As I say, I've got 2 boxes worth of memory for this build. 32 gigs is going to be fine though if you're just doing a standard gaming system. But this memory, look at that. I can't even begin to tell you how much I love some of the white RAM kits on the market right now. They really, really do make me very happy. What I'm going to do is pull back the clips on, I was going to say the grey slots because I'm used to installing 2 DIMMs. It's not, it's all 4 slots today because we're balling in memory, baby. Pop the RAM on the inside slot, boom, the second slot, ka-chow. I've got to think of enough buzzwords now as I do each DIMM of memory. Third DIMM, oh dear. Bam! And then the last DIMM. Right, so memory's in. Please don't turn off. It's not normally like this on the channel. Memory's in. Oh, wow. Look at that. See, oh, isn't that a beautiful motherboard assembly? One more thing I'm going to do is just add a couple of posts in for the CPU cooler. They go here, 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 and here, and provide us a little bit of groundwork for when we actually pop the main cooler itself in a couple of minutes' time. The next step is to pop the whole thing into the case. I love this case. You might think, James, isn't this a little bit compact for a kind of imposing build like this with a large GPU, 360mm rad? Well, I have measured everything, and according to my approximate calculations, it should all fit, he says. The reason is, I want to make a powerful build, but I don't really always want it to be absolutely massive. I think sometimes that kind of takes the fun away. And I also appreciate that not everyone wants a huge build on their setup, but they still, of course, want it to be powerful and great in the latest titles. So I'm going to lay the case down flat for the next stage, and then go ahead and slide the motherboard in. The rear I/O should poke through the rear I/O cutout. There we go. The central post will then help line the motherboard up, and it's just a case of a few screws. 3 along the top, or 2 along the middle actually, because we've got the center standoff, and then 3 down the bottom. That's looking pretty good. The next port of call is to get this radiator in. Now this case supports either a 240mm at the top or a 360mm at the front. And of course, the bigger the better. Our Ryzen CPU could do with 360mm. I'm going to remove the front panel, and then also going to just take out this dust filter. And then this is where things get a bit laborious. I need to actually remove every single screw on all the fans, not because the fans are changing, but because I need to mount the radiator behind them, which means installing a longer screw through the fan and into the radiator. I say laborious, it's not that much of a problem, but that's going to, of course, allow the rad to be installed. You might then think, James, what am I going to do with these additional spare fans that I've got? Well, we can actually put 2 of them at the top of the case. So we're going to have 1 spare. If anyone wants a fan, then let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, so yeah, radiator's going to go at the front, a few screws to do that, and then the next course of action is the water block. It's finally time then to pop the GPU in, the bit that I've been so excited about. Now, what we're going to do is take the graphics card and sort of hover it over the PCI so you can see it does just about fit. And you can see here that we need to remove the second, third, and fourth PCI slots. That's going to make room, of course, for the rear panel. This is a pretty chunky triple slot card, so that's going to make sure there's enough space for it to basically go in. Slide it in, line it up with the slot, give it a bit of a push. Yes, nice. And the 3 thumb screws are going to go back in to secure it into place. I'll add the power cables in just a moment as I install the power supply, Corsair's RM850X. And there we have it. It's built. I'm so happy with it. I put some easy DIY fab cable extensions in as well. It just looks amazing. I'm so pleased. So let's go ahead and install Windows, see if it boots all of that jazz, and then we'll give it a go in some gaming benchmark. I'm sure you can all agree that this is one good looking build, but how well does this white theme system with the 7900 XTX actually perform? The answer is pretty well. Warzone 2 was the first game I tested. 4K high, FSR enabled, quality preset, delivered 137 FPS on average. And 99th percentile results were consistently strong too, but this 137 FPS at 4K gives you competitive frame rates really at this top end resolution. I also tested the other end of the spectrum, Fortnite at 1080p competitive, because why not? 311 frames per second on average. Wow. No one can tell me that Fortnite doesn't perform well on this system, and to be honest, did it more for a bit of fun than anything else. Apex Legends at 4K high was next up, 188 FPS on average, in this slightly more difficult to run first-person shooter, but still some very competitive frame rates here, while Call of Duty's Modern Warfare 2 remastered at 4K high with FSR set to quality delivered an impressive 208 frames per second. Irrespective of what game you throw at this system, you're sure to find good performance. The whole build stayed cool and ran efficiently. I also tried out a bit of Starfield to really see how this quite difficult to run and poorly optimized AAA title would hold up. 4K high here, and the system delivered 97 FPS on average. 90 and 99th percentile results were solid too, with pretty consistent frame rates throughout. It really was impressive seeing just how strong this 7900 XTX based PC performed. You can learn more about this PC, all the parts that make it possible, down at the first links in the description below. Thanks for watching though, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.